Alright, so now since we have finished our role CRUD operation, so what we are going to do next is we are going to see how we can protect our routes based on permissions. So if you remember, in role module we created role permissions. So right now let's say we have these permissions based on the features currently we have, and we'll be adding here more features, right? So what we want now, let's say let's take an example of user. So we want to protect this user endpoint based on the roles as well. Let's say we want admin to only able to access the list of users, and admin to, perform all these operations. Let's say we want anyone can get access apart from the client, like this anyone can see users, for example team lead, member, or what else, and there's a few more. What was the name of other role we have? Project manager, team lead, member. These people can see the users list, but cannot modify it. Client will not see the users list. So what I want here is I want to protect each endpoint based on the roles, but will not be mentioning role name anywhere. We will be mentioning just the permissions here. Like, let's say like get users. So here we want permissions like uh, this this one, where when view users. So if we put permissions here somewhere like this, let me just show you directly, then it will be more clear. So if we try to have something like this, permissions, and in permissions what we can do, we can just add at rate, not at rate, here we can put an list, maybe a comma separated permission. So permission in the this enum, and then we can add view users. Then what will happen, like since if we can access this decorator's parameters in one of our guard, and based on that we can see what are the required permissions for this endpoint, and we will also verify whether the user has this permission or not. If user has this permission, then we will be allowing user to access this endpoint. I hope this is clear. Otherwise, I'll make it clear in some time. Let's start working on the decorator first. So there's a way to create a decorator. I think we have already done it in one of the cases. I think we put it somewhere. Yeah, in private route we created this decorator, but this time what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a set metadata decorator. So let's do one thing. Let's put decorator here in the same role module, decorator. And now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a file. What could be the name? So here I would like to add permissions dot decorator dot ts, and now this will be just a normal function, since let me show you permissions. And so what I want here in user, just forget about the at rate. So assume this is a function, just like a function, and we can pass comma separated roles, or not roles, permissions. Let's say view user or view user, or maybe view profile, something like that. So in that case we can have multiple permissions, and we need to verify all the permissions are present for the given user, the logged in user. Otherwise this will not be able to access the endpoint. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here, so I'm going to find a way to pass this comma separated permission here, and for that let's say here if I put permissions, and or just do it this way, permissions, and if I use string array, so I'm going to use rest operator and I'm going to convert all the comma separated values into one array, and this would be a string, array of string. And here what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use set metadata from NestJS common. So this uses a reflector. So consider reflector is something like what we can say central you can say key value pair, where we can set globally some values, just like in JavaScript, in Node.js we use global. Similarly, like set metadata can help us to set some metadata, and we can access for that controller, we can access those parameters at the time of execution. Let's say at the time of the execution of this endpoint, we can access these, I mean, predefined values here. Whatever the roles, whatever the parameters we are passing here, we can access those values in anywhere. Like if we need to inject reflector for that. So we'll see how we can use reflector. So let's do step by step. So first, in set metadata, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use permissions. So I'm just keeping the key as permission. If I hover over it, I can see it has two parameters, key and value. Just understand it like it will have some value set somewhere in the system, and we can access it with the help of reflector. And now this permissions, we can set this permissions array here in the permissions. What happened? Alright, yeah, that's all. Now this is just like a normal functions. It's using a set metadata decorator. That's why we are not using even though it is not a decorator, but it is returning a decorator. That's why it will work. And here now we can import this. Okay, we need to import this one. All right, and I'm just going to do one thing. Okay, I'm just going to put permission for all, I mean all the endpoints here quickly. So let me just copy and paste it, and this in this. All right, for get user, what we will have, view user, and for update user we'll have update user, and for delete user we'll have delete user. I think we haven't defined this thing here, so let's do one thing. Go in the permission. Okay, so instead of delete we have remove user, so that's why we are not saying delete, we are saying remove. Okay, if I turn this on, then before we can use this controller, we'll have to have access token, right? So otherwise without a login user you will not be able to access this. So let's turn it on right now. That's fine. We can add the access token in the request in header, and then we'll not be able to access this if we add some guard, and in guard if we verify whether user has this role or not. If not, then we will reject the user, we will throw unauthorized exception. Okay, right now we can just it's nothing, it's just a metadata, we are just setting a metadata, so this will do nothing. And so let's do one thing. Okay, let's create a folder guard. In guard, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add one permission.guard.ts. Here what I can do, I can just create a class permission guard. And for to create any guard, two things you will have to do. If you are creating a guard from scratch from NestJS, so what you can do, you can create a class, then you will have to implement can activate interface. Okay, now if when you implement can activate, you will see there's a red highlight, and if you want quick fix, you can go ahead and implement can activate method. So when you implement can activate, you see like it has execution context, so from where we can get request and response. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna remove I'll keep one of them. Alright, so just keep it boolean. In case it will be returning promises, then we can definitely do it. Let's keep it boolean. And now if we return true from here, this will activate the route, otherwise it will not activate it. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make it injectable, since we want to use it in multiple places and will not be creating different instances. Instead we'll be using single instance. So I'm going to add this in provider. Alright, and also I'm going to export it so that I can use it in any other module. Alright, so what we are going to write here, so as we discussed, whatever the metadata we are setting here in permissions, if I open this metadata, we can access with the reflector, right? So understand reflector is a service. So so what we can do, we can inject reflector. So how we inject reflector? It's just a class. So what we can do, we can use private reflector and reflector probably we don't need to define anything in the constructor, so I'm just keeping it empty. And next what we can do here, okay, so what we can do, inside can activate, I can fetch all the required permissions for each endpoint. So let's say I'm trying to get users. So first it will check whether this is get. So it will try to match the handler with this. I mean this endpoint thing. So it will come here and then it will execute this one, and it will check whether it will check. I mean it will set the view users in permissions property in an array. So this will be an array. Now what I'm gonna do, so what I will do next is I will use something like this, use guards, and then I'm going to use, what was our guard name, permission. So this is permission. We have so many permissions. Okay, permission guard. So we are going to use this way, and then it will automatically call this one. Alright, and then what we can do here, we can get value from the reflector. So let's do it. Required permissions. Why I'm writing required permission? The reason behind that, this is the list which we have mentioned here of, I mean this is the list of permission which we have mentioned here, and this is actually the required for this endpoint. And we will be using this dot reflector get all and merge. You can do two things. So how this will help, let's say let's say we have defined some permission here, and we are defining some permission here. So it will merge both the permissions, and then we can check our user permission should include all the permissions mentioned either on the class or on the handler as well. So we can use get and override, but here we will be using get all and merge. And now we can also pass here the type it is returning. So generally we'll have an array of string, since this is a array of permissions that is actually in string. And here what we pass, if I show you what we pass, let me just open it. So it's a decorator and then target. Let me show you how we can write it. So the first parameter is the key, decorator key. So if I go back in decorator, so this key we need to pass, and then the context target. So we are going to use context dot handler, get handler, and this should be an array. The second parameter should be an array. If you notice, this is an array. So we can pass multiple targets. Let's do this way and see if this works. Context dot get class. I'll just keep class on top of handler, although I'm not pretty much sure whether the order matters here, but we don't need to think much about it since we are actually getting annotations from here on class and on from handler, then we are merging it, right? I'll just quickly reformat my file, and then we can try to log in. We can try to log this and see how this is working. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just return something here, for example return true, so that it doesn't throw error, and I can start my server. Okay, to test this get users and test the guard, which I have mentioned at top of get users, I'll have to call this endpoint, and probably to call this endpoint, since @private is activated, I'll have to log in first. Let's try it without login. So I'm getting this error. Let's log in again. Now we have this access token, so ideally this access token might be added in the get users. Let's point it to environment variable access token and then try to execute, and then we can see if we are getting something here. Alright, so we are not getting any log. Let me just remove this one, although this is not causing any issue. So what I can check why this is this didn't execute. So what could be the reason? Okay, so if I just scroll it a bit, This permission guard we have already added. Okay. Can we try it, executing this again and see if the log still doesn't come? So here we are getting this uses. I didn't see it. I don't know how I didn't see it, but let me do one thing. Let me try to pass multiple permission here and see if that is working as expected. Yeah, so we are getting all the permissions, and now what we need to do is we need to verify the user has all the permissions mentioned here. So how we can do that? So to do that, I'll have to go back in auth, and during authentication, let's say if I go back in authentication, so I will have to modify the JWT token. So how that will happen? So if I go back in login, I'll show you we created access token with this payload, but this time we'll have to modify it and to include role as well, and then we will extract the role in the strategy, and in JWT we will also include the role, and then that role we can extract here in guard. In permission guard we can get request from the context, and then we can extract the user, and we will also have a list of roles that user has at that time. So I am going to do this in next video.